Hi, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Malice in the Mitten. I'm your host, Tracy Preston, along with my bestie, Christine Mulligan. Hey, Christine.
Hey, Trace. How's it going? How's everything been? I'm just going to bogart the front end of this show for a second. Tracy and Todd went and did an interview.
Yeah, we did. The Baron and Cindy Knight show. Two of the coolest people.
It's like a live streaming show. There were a few mic issues, but other than the mic issues, it's a live streaming show, right? So, I mean, everybody knows how they go sometimes. I mean, I thought it was super cute and endearing, but they did great. You guys did great. And there were a few times where they just like jumped to my defense and jumped to say how great of a person I was. And they give me too much credit. I really am an asshole, but you know.
It was.
I had to reciprocate some love on air, just like they gave me on air. So I bogarted the front end of the show for that. They did a good job. I did go watch it after they streamed. I was busy working while they were streaming. Yes, it was a late night for me, but they did fantastic. And I watched it. It's on the, as the guy said, interweb. It's on the interweb floating out there. Go watch it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you guys had fun. You looked gorgeous as always.
Thank
and now we can resume. Let's get into it. What are you telling me about today? What's happening? Aren't we doing a third part, right?
Yeah, we are actually wrapping up our series on the shadows of Macomb County, and so this is the final episode in the series, and it's hard. It's a hard one.
All right, let's get into it.
All right, so this is season 10, episode 22. Again, our final episode in the shadows of Macomb County. The Deroo case, acquitted, but not answered. Some cases don't announce themselves as mysteries at first. They arrive quietly, dressed as domestic tragedy, wrapped in the ordinary language of family life. But over time, they reveal something else. Not a lack of answers, but a fracture between what the law can prove and what the heart keeps asking. In the summer of 1981, a young mother and two small children were killed inside their Macomb County home. Another child survived, and the man accused of killing them walked out of court legally free. This is the story of the Deroo family and of a case that still resists closure. I'm your host, and this is Malice in the Mitten. This episode marks the final chapter in our Shadows of Macomb County series, a series dedicated to telling difficult stories with care, accuracy, and respect for the people whose lives were forever changed.
These cases don't end neatly. They leave questions, quiet grief, and lasting impact. And as we close this series, we do so intentionally. Not because the stories no longer matter, but because they deserve to be told fully, then allowed to rest. Thank you for walking through these shadows with us.
Now, before we begin, we need to say a few important things.
This episode includes discussion of domestic violence, child homicide, and attempted suffocation. Listeners' discretion is advised. It also includes a surviving child, someone who lived through extreme violence and has never chosen to live publicly or speak about what happened.
Out of respect for survivors, especially those who were children at the time of a violent crime, we will not speculate about their lives, identities, or whereabouts. Survival is not an invitation for curiosity. Privacy is not a missing puzzle piece. Our focus tonight is on the facts, the system, and the people whose lives were taken, not on exposing those who survived. Some stories deserve answers. Some lives deserve peace.
This case contains both.
Before she was ever a name in a case file, Deborah Deroo was a young woman doing what so many women of her generation were expected, and often forced to do early and all at once. At just 25 years old, Deborah was already the mother of 3 children. Her days were shaped by routine, responsibility, and the quiet, exhausting labor of raising small children. Meals cooked, messes cleaned, naps negotiated, nights shortened by crying and worry. There is nothing glamorous about that kind of life, but there is devotion in it. Friends and family would later describe Deborah as attentive, protective, and deeply focused on her children. She was not reckless. She was not detached. She was present in the way that shows up in small, unremarkable acts that never make the news. Robert Deroo made his living as a small business owner in Macomb County. He ran DBK Industries, a custom woodworking and cabinetry business, the kind that relied on local trust, word of mouth, and long hours spent building things by hand. It was steady work, physical work, the kind of business that doesn't just support a family financially, but it ties a person to their community, clients, contractors, neighbors who recognize your name. From the outside, the Deroos looked like many young families trying to make it work. A growing household, a small business, and the quiet pressure that comes with both.
And that's something that gets lost so often. We hear young mother and then move on. But that's a full life. That's constant responsibility. That's a lot of responsibility.
Sure is. Deborah's world revolved around her kids, not because she had no other identity, but because at that moment in her life, they were everything that mattered most. She was still becoming who she was, still figuring things out, still very much alive. Deborah's marriage to Robert Deroo was not immune to strain. Earlier in 1981, Deborah had filed for divorce, a fact later confirmed through court records. For a young woman with 3 children, that filing suggests something had reached a breaking point. Now, divorce filings don't come out of nowhere. They come after long nights, hard conversations, and the realization that staying might be more damaging than leaving. But the filing was later dismissed. The couple reconciled, at least legally.
Yeah, well, that was kind of a flag, though, that stands out for you, because reconciliation in a marriage doesn't always mean resolution. Whatever the problem was, it doesn't mean the problem went away. It just means that they decided to stick it out a little bit longer and keep working on it. That doesn't mean that the issues were resolved. It just means that they decided to tough it out a little longer.
Right. Sometimes it means hope. Sometimes it means pressure. Sometimes it means survival. And we don't get to decide which one it was for Deborah. What we do know is that she stayed in the home, in the marriage, and in the daily work of raising her children. July 4th, 1981 fell on a Saturday. Fireworks echoed across Macomb County. Families gathered. Streets finally grew quiet late into the night. Now, sometime during those hours, while the outside world celebrated, violence entered the Deroo home. When police arrived, they encountered a scene that was devastating, not just in its brutality, but in its intimacy. Deborah Deroo had been strangled. Her son, Nathaniel, 5 years old, had been suffocated. Her daughter, Jessica, only 17 months old, had also been suffocated. The youngest child, Nicholas, had been attacked as well. He is the only survivor of the attack. Now, while the ages of Nathaniel and Jessica were clearly reported at the time, public records do not consistently state Nicholas's exact age. What is clear is that he was very young when the violence occurred.
Well, that takes my breath away a little bit, but at the same time, I'm super grateful that he was too young, that he does not remember it.
Right. This wasn't a single act of violence. It was repeated, deliberate, and devastating. The home was immediately sealed as a crime scene. The place where Deborah tucked her children in at night became a place of evidence markers and police tape. From the beginning, investigators focused not only on what they found, but on what they didn't. There were no broken doors, no shattered windows, no signs of forced entry. Nothing suggested a stranger had come in from the outside. Police reconstructed timelines, interviewed neighbors, and scrutinized Robert Deroo's account of the evening. He told them he had been bowling, an alibi that would later anchor both sides of the case. Forensic teams examined bedding, collected fibers, and documented every inch of the home. Prosecutors would later argue that fibers found on Robert's clothing connected him to the scene.
But with that kind of evidence isn't the same thing as certainty. I mean, he lived with them in the home.
Right. Fibers can suggest contact. They can't always prove timing. And timing is everything in a case like this. Suspicion grew. Certainty did not. But more than 2 years passed before charges were brought. On January 5th, 1984, Robert Deroo was charged with 3 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. The delay itself spoke volumes about the difficulty of the case. Investigators and prosecutors needed time to build something strong enough to survive the courtroom. Macomb County watched closely as the trial approached. Now, the trial lasted about 5 weeks. The prosecution called 62 witnesses, presenting a case rooted in circumstantial evidence, forensic interpretation, and marital history. Their theory was straightforward. A domestic dispute escalated into lethal violence, followed by an attempted alibi. The defense focused on absence. There was no eyewitness, no confession, and no definitive physical evidence placing Robert Deroo at the moment of the killings.
And juries definitely feel that absence.
They do, because the law doesn't ask what feels likely. It asks what can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The jurors listened carefully, not just to testimony, but to the gaps between it. Now, the trial of Robert Deroo stretched over roughly 5 weeks in the spring of 1984, as dozens of witnesses took the stand on both sides, presented extensive testimony. After closing arguments, the jury retired to consider the evidence. On June 16, 1984, the verdict was read. Not guilty on all counts. Robert Deroo walked out of the courtroom a free man. The legal case was over. The emotional one was not.
Okay, I gotta say it. All I'm left with is this whole time, that infant child, I imagine, was in the care of this man. You don't mention anything about that. So, and now that he's already been tried for it, double jeopardy says he can't be tried for it again. So does that mean that this man raised his son?
We're going to get to that. I knew you were gonna poke at that one. I knew it was coming. I'm prepared. So it's coming. It's coming. Okay. Now, in the years that followed, Robert Deroo rebuilt his life quietly. He remarried. He restored his business, DBK Industries, a business that had suffered under the weight of suspicion and public scrutiny in a community where trust is everything. Even an acquittal doesn't always restore what's been lost. He avoided interviews and public commentary. Now, there is no reliable public record of where he lives today or what his life looks like now. And that absence isn't a mystery to solve. It's simply where the historical record ends. Now, from that point forward, the case belongs to the courts, the archives, and the people who lived through it, not to speculation. One question we think of is this: if Robert Deroo was acquitted, why wasn't Nicholas simply returned to live with his father? The answer is that criminal court and family court operate very differently. An acquittal means the state could not prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. But custody decisions were made under a different standard entirely. Family court looks at safety, stability, and the best interest of the child. Nicholas was not just a witness to violence, he survived it. And in cases like that, courts are not required to reunite a child with a parent simply because criminal charges didn't result in a conviction. And those decisions are private, sealed, and focused on protecting the child, not satisfying public curiosity. So to answer your question, Christine, Nicholas was never put back in the care of his father. The case was never reopened. No alternate suspect was charged. Deborah Deroo, meanwhile, became another woman remembered primarily for the way her life ended, rather than for the life she lived. Again, Nicholas survived the attack. He was badly injured, but he lived. What happened afterward, where he went, who raised him, what kind of life he built, was never made public, and that silence is intentional.
Yeah, so we're not going to know where he is today because, he was an infant, obviously. If he was younger than a 17-month-old, he was definitively a baby that thankfully won't remember any of this trauma. But where he is today is kind of irrelevant because he does deserve to live without having to be reminded of this trauma.
That's right. Nicholas was a child who survived extraordinary violence. He did not choose this case, and he does not owe the public his story. The absence of information isn't a mystery to solve. It's a boundary to respect. For law enforcement, the Deroo case remains one of those files that never truly closes. The evidence raised suspicion, but not certainty. The verdict resolved the charges, but not the questions. In cases like this, police are left with an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the system reaches the end of what it can prove, even when answers may still exist. Justice, in those moments, becomes incomplete. Not because no one cared, but because the standard is designed to protect against being wrong.
Deborah Deroo mattered long before her name appeared in a courtroom. Her children mattered, and one survivor mattered enough to be left in peace. But really what I'm left with is the fact that there is a plausibility, at least in my mind hearing this story, that if his alibi was strong enough and all of the circumstantial evidence was not enough to prove his guilt, what I'm left with is the question of what if? What if it was someone else? What if it is loosely connected to a similar crime like this somewhere else? Because we hear about these types of things where a family is attacked and the woman is attacked and her children are killed. Like, it has happened other places. And it was a stranger, a passer-through person, you know, however you want to call it. Back in the day, we would have said a vagabond, you know, in the 1900s, the early 1900s, a vagabond popped by and committed this heinous act. Someone that, you know, they say the devil was speaking to them. You know what I'm saying? Like, we hear all this other crazy stuff. But what I'm not hearing in this case is that they kept looking. They just decided that sometimes the system goes this way and you don't get a conviction. Instead of sometimes we were looking in the wrong place and we should have looked elsewhere.
Exactly.
There's no looking elsewhere here.
Right. Like it ended, right? Because what do they always say in any relationship where a spouse or a girlfriend has been murdered? They always go to the person closest to them, the boyfriend, the husband. So, and I'm with you, there could be a lot of different endings here. A thread, a piece, you know, of whatever they found. Well, of course he lived in the home. Of course a thread could possibly be on him. It could have been in, you know, this is all hypothetical, guys. This is just my brain and Christine's brain just looking at the what ifs. What are the possibilities? I think to myself, why in the hell is this guy leaving his family on the 4th of July and bowling? Was she, you know, we already know she stayed in the relationship. Maybe she had someone over. And I'm not trying to victim shame here. It's just, I'm just thinking of other possibilities. Maybe there was someone she had at the house. Maybe that person made advances on her and shit went sideways.
Yeah. Or there is the possibility that, like you said, why was he not there on the 4th of July? Why was he not, you know, why was he out bowling? Where are all the people? Well, I'm sure if he really was bowling, he had other people saying he was out there bowling. But you don't bowl until the wee hours of the morning. But then again, you really didn't talk about time frames, so I don't know when exactly this likely happened. But when he came home, he was obviously the one that reported it. You know what I mean? So he wasn't that far off from being there. I don't know. There's just so many what ifs in this case. But at the same time, I'm also thinking about the fact that you didn't really talk about how he was pressing for them to look for someone else. So it was almost like he resigned it to, I didn't do it, but I don't care who did. Like that's the vibe I'm being left with from hearing the story. So his children were murdered, not just his ex-wife, you know, wife that was close to being an ex, you know what I mean? Not just it wasn't about just his marriage and that being a bad relationship. These are also his children that were murdered, and he doesn't seem to be on a crusade to find their murderer. He just decided to prove his innocence and be on his merry way.
Right.
That's weird.
Yeah,
that's weird.
I agree too, because I'll tell you right now, if I didn't do it, you would not hear the end of it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. So
like it would be today that I would still be like, hello, look for who murdered my kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so round robin, we're right back to the husband.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Something doesn't feel right with this, and it's crazy that it just faded, which is extremely sad for this woman and her children. Extremely sad. Yeah. Now, before we go, we want to thank you, our listeners, for staying with us through Shadows of Macomb County. These are not easy stories to tell, and they were not easy stories to hear. Your willingness to listen thoughtfully, to sit with discomfort, and to honor the people at the center of these cases matters more than you know. So thank you for trusting us with these stories. This has been Malice in the Mitten. So have a great week, everyone, and we will see you all back on Wednesday for Round Robin.
Bye.
Bye.